So Babolat has been making the Pure Drive for 30 years. And yes, they've made some changes to this racket over the years. Stiffness has varied, weight distributions have shifted, string patterns have become more open, but at the end of the day, we're still dealing with the same Pure Drive mold. It's got the same kind of oval beam design and 23, 26, 23 millimeter beam structure. And I guess my point is, after 30 years of minor tweaks, how different is this 2025 Pure Drive actually going to be? Well, to be honest, not that different. The main criticism with these Pure Drives has always been comfort, and there's a reason that Babolats are known as arm breakers, with the high stiffnesses found in most models being the major factor. Tennis Warehouse's initial measurements on these 2025 Pure Drives show that the RA has dropped from a very high 71 down to 66 for this new version, due in part to the NF2 dampening tech that they've put in the throat of these frames, which follows the industry trends like Heads Auxetic and YoneX's latest Minilon tech. And honestly, I'm not that convinced that the 5-point drop in RA is that consequential, or at least not just based on some outlier measurements from an early sample batch, because to me, the playability is pretty much the same as last year. Another thing that's pretty much the same as last year is my love for direct tennis. If you are looking for an all-in-one app to connect to local stringers in your area complete with marketplace features, check out the links in the description below to the App Store where you can download Direct Tennis, check out their website and Instagram page. We just ran a giveaway last month, so if you want to be locked and loaded for the next one, you want to make sure you give them a follow. Power and stability has always been the Pure Drive's bread and butter. Even with my copy boasting a pretty meager swing weight of only 280 unstrung, the thick beam and high stiffness transfer energy extremely efficiently back into every shot. And there are 3 places that I took best advantage of the Pure Drive's power. The first would be on ground strokes, as you would expect. More power makes those attacking balls ever so slightly more poisonous, and it's just incredibly easy to hit through the court. The second place is on defense. Anytime I was on the ropes struggling on defense at the back of the court, I knew that I could use the Pure Drive's power to push balls back deeper into my opponent's territory, holding them at bay. And the third place is at net. Now, personally, I'm not that comfortable at net. My volleys are relatively weak. I lack that natural instinct that you'll find with people who are regular doubles players or have more of a serve and volley style. But this Pure Drive made me want to get up there. There is a tremendous amount of stability, and coupled to some of the best power you'll find in any racket on the market, you just get this whole package which leads to effortless punching volleys. Sometimes it really just feels like all you have to do at net is hold the racket out and look for the ball flying through the air. As long as you can find these strings, you'll be able to punch that volley deep in a way that's both assertive and predictable. And I think a big reason for that is the outstanding maneuverability. So zooming out, the whole point of the Pure Drive is ease of use, hence this easy power, this easy stability. The problem is those 2 things usually require weight to execute, either a high static weight, so just how many grams the racket weighs for more stability, or a high swing weight, so how heavy that racket feels to swing, weight up in the tip, for more power. I personally use a racket that weighs 12 grams more than this Pure Drive and has a swing weight that's over 20 points higher because I felt like I needed that for power and stability. But this Pure Drive has me second guessing that so-called need. Even at the 310 swing weight that my racket came to, the Pure Drive was rock solid. These lower swing weights make it tremendously easy to set up into your shot and find that high racket head speed that's conducive for the modern game. There wasn't a single time where I felt like this racket was slowing me down, or I couldn't count on the frame to bail me out of tricky situations, making it one of the easiest rackets to pick up and play with that we've ever tested here on TennCom. So these Power 100s are typically marketed not only for providing excellent power, but also great spin. And that said, I really don't think that spin is a standout feature with this racket. If If you're like me or someone who relies on big spin and strong spin modulation to play your best tennis, you probably won't find your best tennis with this pure drive. I personally get way more spin with the Pure Aero Rafa I've been using, even the new EZone 100, these new T-Fights that are coming out, the Gravity 98, the V-Cores, and a few others. But for hitting flat shots, this thing is bomb. Finding depth into the court is effortless and surprisingly controllable. Taking balls early and on the rise is also hugely rewarding due to this frame's outstanding stability, great maneuverability, making it easy to get in position, get set up, and then time that ball accurately. This racket simply does not flutter on contact, which makes it incredibly predictable and controllable for such a powerful frame. Now, I personally think that the control with this frame is amazing, especially for such a high power stick. And now I know a lot of you are probably going to disagree with this take because it's a pure drive. It's not designed for control, it's designed for power. But for me, control means that the racket does what I expect it to do. The outputs match my inputs. And this racket is consistent in the way that it interacts with the ball and it behaves predictably. This means that high power frames like this Pure Drive 100 can also have high levels of control, contrary to the old school definition of control, where control was considered to be the opposite of power. Now here's why I think this racket offers great control. The flex is extremely uniform. There's no bending in the hoop like you would see in the Clash Phantom or Gravity MP. And there's no floppy kind of throat flex like we were seeing with the new Gravity 98 or the Boom MP. The string pattern is decently open, yes, but it's consistently spaced and there's nothing funky going on here with like super open tips like we do see in the V-Cores or the Booms. This is simply a high launch angle, stiffer frame that stays incredibly stable through contact, never fluttering, never wavering, resulting in surprisingly consistent playability. Like any decent control frame, the Pure Drive encouraged me to swing out, to go for my shots, and to really take control of every point. The feel here is still pretty muted. It's definitely more muted than the Boom, in the same realm I would say as the EZone 100, though I think I need some more time with that EZone 100 before I can be sure. It may be like 2% more muted than the previous Pure Drive. I strung this new one up right back to back with the previous version, an Anniversary 30th Edition paint, with the same string and same tension for a back-to-back test. And all I can say is that the performance was basically identical. I think for this application, the muted feel is completely fine, not necessarily something they really need to improve on from the previous version. Whatever this NF2 tech in the throat is, seems to actually produce pretty good results across Babolat's entire racket line. Yes, the feel is muted, but it's really solid feeling. The strike, the arrow, the drive, they all have a pretty solid feel now, something that historically has not been the case, as old Babolats were often considered hollow, tinny, or harsh. And at the end of the day, this racket does communicate just enough for me. You can feel where that ball lands on the string bed and where it's going to go after you make contact. Does this racket have some sort of angelic hitting feel that you just love? No, of course not. It's a Pure Drive, but it's serviceable enough for most players, and I really don't think the comfort issues are going to be that present with this one, just like they weren't so much with the last one, especially as strings are getting softer and the tech is getting better. So string setups and racket customization. I tried 3 different string setups: RPM Blast, Restring Sync, and Toroline Caviar. And none of them really felt that different or played especially well or especially poorly in this frame. Since this racket is pretty muted, it's not that string sensitive. Of the 3 strings that I did try, Caviar was probably my favorite. I think this string offers tremendous depth control. I like it in the 1.24mm gauge. It's great for flatter shots, really. You can find your depth really easily with the targeting laterally, directionally. The control is also quite strong. You get a nice connection to the ball from a little bit of a longer dwell time because the string is relatively soft compared to the wider market, even though it is Toroline's stiffest offering. Great long dwell time, great ball pocketing. You get a nice amount of grip from the 6-sided shape as well, but it's not really launchy. Like, the edges aren't sharp by any means. It just gives you that kind of ball feel. For me, sink was a bit too point and shooty, where the ball was coming in and out of the string bed too quickly for my personal tastes, and RPM blast was a bit stiff and generally unrewarding, which is kind of how I feel about that string in every racket. I also went after a couple different customization setups, put a ton of weight at 12 o'clock, responded pretty well, counterbalanced in the handle, but at the end of the day, I settled with a 330 strung weight, including the overgrip, 32.4 centimeter balance point, and a 321 swing weight, increasing swing weight by just about 10 points compared to how my frame was stock. Interestingly, this is way below my spec range of the typical setups that I've been using, but I wanted to really retain this easy to use pure drive DNA, and I think this setup does that. Increasing swing weight beyond 325 really made things just feel clubby, slowed things down, and I don't think the stability and power gains that I got from the extra weight were worth the losses in swing speed.
So Beckett asked me to send him my thoughts on the Pure Drive 100. So I am taking a short break out of my vacation here in Colombia to tell you what I can remember. The PD 100 was, first and foremost, super powerful. You got this feeling that it just weighed way more than it actually did. The on-contact feel was super authoritative, and I describe it to almost the sound and feeling you get when you're closing the door on a Mercedes G-Wagon. It just has sort of an aristocratic vibe of the way it goes about hitting the tennis ball. And I really, really liked that. And to be honest, for the first couple of hits, I fell in love with this racket. I thought it was really, really tremendous and super fun to use. I think the feel is unique, and importantly, for me, it is actually a very comfortable racket. As my arm has been pretty sensitive over the last year or two, that's become something that I've really started to care about more. So I thought genuinely this might be a racket I would be interested in switching to. However, as time went on, I kind of noticed a few things that I didn't really love. Mainly, that unique feel is present no matter where you hit it on the racket. If you hit it off-center and hit a shank, it feels almost the same as if you hit it dead center and hit a perfect shot. And that just isn't conducive to what I'm looking for in a racket at this time. So overall, I do think this is a unique offering. The feel is truly unlike anything I've used before. It's got great power, superb stability on contact. I think that it doesn't swing particularly fast through the air, and I felt like spin generation wasn't by any means exceptional. But overall, if you're in the market for something that is kind of domineering, you'll have great serves, you'll have great plus ones, and when you're in control of the point, you'll be able to kind of maintain that control and finish the points at net. This thing is a volley monster. It is a great proposition. For me, and what I'm looking for right now, I still want to retain some more feel, some more dynamism throughout the contact points on the racket, so that I know if I'm hitting it well or if I'm hitting it off center. But it does bring some unique characteristics, and I do think it has a place on the market, especially for people who are looking for something a little bit more comfortable while evolving their game.
So final recommendations. Overall, the Pure Drive is tremendously easy to recommend to a very wide range of players. The stability to maneuverability ratio is outstanding, makes it especially appealing to intermediate players in my opinion, especially if you're a flatter hitter or you're an all-court player who really likes to take that ball early. If you use knifing slices, this thing works really well. 2, I think sneaky net play, this thing's also surprisingly good. If that's you, I think this Pure Drive would be an excellent companion. If you use the previous version of the Pure Drive, the 2025 model is going to be a seamless switch. I think they play it essentially exactly the same. but that also makes upgrading to this new version feel pretty needless unless your frames are worn out or you absolutely love the paint. Which, if you're wondering, I think it looks fine. I don't understand why people have really disliked the paint on these. It's very neutral. I don't think people are saying it looks girly, which I think is a stupid criticism. I use a pink racket, but I don't think it looks girly. It's like a titanium blue on navy. Since when has titanium been a girly color? I will say that this is probably one of my favorite rackets of all time for doubles, so if you're into swinging, I think this is an overall excellent racket. And if you're interested in picking one up for yourself, the best way to support the creation of more and better content just like this is to use our affiliate links in the description to Tennis Warehouse, Tennis Warehouse Europe, and Tennis Only Australia. Thanks so much for watching, and I think we're gonna see you tomorrow.